this is the part of the event that everybody's been waiting for. This is our host for tonight, our primary speaker, and it's such an honor to be able to introduce our Lieutenant Governor, Dan Forrest. And I know many of you remember from the campaign the slogan that he used, "Run, Forrest, run," right? Now, Dan, before I introduce you, there's a rumor that I heard. I need you to confirm it tonight. But they said that when you announced you were going to run, one of the press came to you and asked you a lot of good questions. And of course, one of the big questions is, why are you running? And what I hear is you said, "I just felt like running." And later, after you won, they said, "Now they can call me Lieutenant Dan." Now, if you like that impression, my name again is Stephen Kidd. If you didn't like it, my name is Greg Etz. Dan Forrest. He's the first Republican lieutenant governor to be elected in North Carolina in over 20 years. And only the second since 1897. That goes back to the carpetbagger days, right? Dan is a registered architect. He and his wife Alice reside in Raleigh with their 4 children, ages 9 to 21. After graduating from the University of North Carolina, Charlotte with a degree in architecture, Dan became a leader in the business community, having served as office president and senior partner of the state's largest architectural firm, Little Diversified Architectural Consulting. As Lieutenant Governor, Dan serves as the president of the North Carolina Senate and serves as a voting member of the State Board of Education, the State Board of Community Colleges, the State Economic Development Board, is chairman of the E-Learning Commission, a member of the North Carolina Military Affairs Commission, a member of the Special Committee on Digital E-Learning, and the newly appointed chair of the Energy Policy Council. In his spare time, Dan enjoys anything that includes spending time with his wife and his kids. It's my pleasure to introduce to you our Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina, Dan Forrest.
It's an honor and a privilege to be with you tonight. I would bet there's not many people in this room that would like to get up here and speak at 8 o'clock after that awesome dinner. And it's just, if we could just take a moment. You know, I'm on the rubber chicken circuit every day, and I eat just, some crazy meals every day, but this was some of the best food I've ever had on the campaign trail. So if you could just give a hand to the folks that prepared this. How awesome is it to look back and remember Ronald Reagan and Abraham Lincoln and what they stood for. One of the common themes that ran between both of those great men and both of those great leaders, 2 of our greatest leaders in the history of our nation, was their belief and their trust in God. And you see it certainly through the theme of the Battle Hymn of the Republic. Christ died to make us holy. Let's fight to make men free. That's what Ronald Reagan believed. Ronald Reagan always believed that it was morning in America. He always looked at what was great and the bright future that lay ahead. But the only way that we're going to really wake up from the slumber and see morning in America is if we do trust in God. If we move forward with our trust in God, knowing that God is who He said that He is, then we can move forward with power, and we can move forward without fear, and we can move forward to really change this great nation. But nothing will change until we do that. And so you are all freedom fighters in this effort. And as Craig said a little bit ago, what you do makes a difference. What you do absolutely makes a difference. Every little thing that you do, just being here tonight on a Tuesday night when you could have been doing 1,000 other things, coming here absolutely makes a difference. So thank you for doing it. Thank you for what you did in our campaign a year ago. Thank you for what you are doing for all these candidates that are here. Your theme tonight is building a better North Carolina. And we're doing that with your help. And we're going to transform America by building a better North Carolina. And so what does it look like to build a better North Carolina? Well, let me just give you a few examples. And as I speak tonight, I'm really speaking for your representatives and for your senators because they're doing the hard work. And they do need your prayers because it takes a lot of courage to move forward the way that they're moving forward. Let me just tell you before I start that Republican ideas do matter. Republican ideas are making a difference. Republican ideas are changing North Carolina. We've had greater change in North Carolina over the last 3 years than we have seen in this state in decades because of really bold, courageous moves by the people that you elected to send to Raleigh. So thank you for doing that. So what does that look like? That looks like taking over leadership a few years ago in our state and inheriting $3 billion worth of debt. And we had to balance the budget and balancing the budget without raising taxes. At the same time, cutting the sales tax in North Carolina by $1.5 billion. Immediately after that, a year and a half later, by saying, you know what, we're going to have the most aggressive tax reform that the state of North Carolina has ever seen, and the most aggressive tax reform in the United States of America, and cutting the personal and corporate income tax by $1.5 billion more. That only happens with Republican leadership. And then saying we're going to eliminate the death tax in North Carolina so that you can keep the fruits of your labors when you die, and you can pass that on to your kids if you'd like to do that. That is bold, aggressive, Republican, conservative leadership. That's leadership that moved us from 44th in the nation in business tax climate to 17th in the nation in business tax climate by one signing of the pen saying we're open for business in North Carolina. At the same time, they said, you know what, Mr. Obama, we may have to accept Obamacare in North Carolina, but we're not going to accept the state health care exchange because we know that not only can you not transform the greatest healthcare system that's ever existed in the history of the world, but we know you're not even going to be able to run the website. And that happened right here in North Carolina. At the same time they were doing that, they said, you know what, we have to transform and reform unemployment insurance in our state because our state owed $2.7 billion to the United States government. The greatest debt owed by any state agency in the United States of America was our state debt that we owed to the federal government for unemployment. And so they right-sized unemployment so that future generations would make sure that they had that safety net in place. And since they did that, not only has our unemployment rate dropped in North Carolina by 2 percentage points, we went from being one of the worst, most unemployed states in the nation to the 5th fastest growing state in the nation. Not only did they do that, they said, you know what, we need to have photo voter ID in North Carolina so we have fair and transparent elections in our state. Not only did they do that, they said at the same time, you know what, we need to transform education in North Carolina, and in this budget alone, they are spending $320 million more on K-12 education than has ever been spent in the history of North Carolina. $320 million more is not a cut like the left would say, that we're destroying education and we're ruining education. How many of you in this room knew that this General Assembly and this governor did not lay off one teacher or one teacher's assistant? Not one. But the left is telling that story every single day. That's what you're reading in the newspapers. We're transforming education in North Carolina. I'm going to talk a little bit about that tonight. But there's a lot of really great transformation that's been happening just in the last 3 years. More good stuff has happened in the last 3 years under Republican control than happened for decades under Democrat control. And that's because of the work that you're doing in this room. So thank you very much for what you're doing. I'm going to talk about something a little bit different tonight. The title of this presentation is Disruptive Change. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what that looks like and where we need to move and how we need to move forward as Republicans in North Carolina and how North Carolina is going to change this nation and change the world. It's a fast-paced world that we live in. It's a very different world than it was even 30 years ago. And we need to make sure that we're building the foundation here in our state so that we can move forward the right way. And so I have to qualify this by saying it's not government's role to transform and to innovate, but it's government's role to lay the foundation and the infrastructure so that businesses can do what they do best, to innovate and to hire people to create wealth. And that's the foundation that we're going to build here in North Carolina. So many of you may be saying, what is disruptive change? You may not have heard this term before, but this is really about the types of changes happening every day around us and in our country and around the world. And we have to be prepared and we have to be ready for this. And I believe it's Republican ideas that are going to help us deal with this and help us move forward. And so the power of disruptive change, what does that look like in our country? Well, you never really know when disruptive change is going on. You really can't say as it's happening that it's happening. Something that you kind of look at down the road and you realize the changes that took place. You never know. You may be surprised by some of the decisions that are made with disruptive change. But it's things like Tesla versus Edison. You know, are we going to have AC power or DC power? Who's going to win the battle between Facebook and MySpace? Is it going to be the Kindle, or is it going to be the iPad that transforms the tablet world around the world? Is it going to be gas or electric vehicles? Is it going to be VHS versus Beta, or Google versus Yahoo, or YouTube? What is it going to be? We don't always know when those battles are going on. You know, is the battle really going to be human versus machine? And that's really where we've seen technology change the face of the planet over the last couple of decades. And the reason that this is important is because as Republicans, we need to have the right message. We need to have a visionary message. We need to have a message that talks about innovation and vision and crafting an envisioned future for our state. We don't just need to be the party that deals in the minutia of policy every day. We'll keep doing that. We're going to keep fighting that fight. But we're going to change this world by having painting an envisioned future for our state. So this disruptive change may look like this. It may look like what Sears and Roebuck catalog did to Main Street USA. It may look like what the Suburban Mall did to the Sears and Roebuck catalog, or what Amazon.com is now doing to the Suburban Mall. This is disruptive change in the process of how we shop and how we go about business every day. You probably all remember a time when coffee was free, or it may have cost a nickel, and you'd go to the store to get, or a restaurant to get coffee or breakfast in the morning, and they'd fill up your coffee, and they do it for free all morning long. Well, what happened? That was called a commodity, and that commodity turned into a fashion statement by this company called Starbucks that made this nice little logo, this white cup, and they put it in a little plastic or paper cup, and people started to walk around with their coffee cups, and they'd hold it out, hold the logo out so people could see the logo, so that they now know that you're not drinking free coffee, you're drinking $4 coffee. And so they changed this world of the commodity into this world of the fashion statement. And as they did that, they started to relabel and rebrand coffee. So small, medium, and large now became tall, grande, and venti. What in the world does that mean anyway? But they changed the language and they introduced terms to America like latte and cappuccino and Americano and frappuccino. And then that wasn't the disruptive change. The real disruptive change is what they did to the workplace. They transformed the workplace in America, and they created this slogan called "There's home, there's work, and then there's Starbucks," what's called the third place. And people all over the world started to go to work at Starbucks. They wouldn't go into the office, they'd go plug their computer in at this place called Starbucks, and they do their work there. That's called disruptive change. The office environment all over the world was changed because of a commodity called coffee and what a company called Starbucks did to it. Or take Apple Computer, for instance. Many of you have one of these devices in your hand or in your home. Many of you could look across this screen and you could name them even. You could say, I have an iPad, I have an iPhone, I have an iPod, I have a MacBook. And you would know these things by name. How many other computer companies could you say that about? Could you say that about Dell? Could you say that about IBM? Well, what did Apple do differently? They made technology cool, and they made it beautiful. And they started to transform the market of technology by doing that. But that is not what transformed the market, and that wasn't really disruptive change. Part of this was you can go into an Apple store now anywhere around the world, and you can see a packed retail space full of people that already own all these devices. Going in to check out what's the next new device, but that wasn't disruptive change either. What was disruptive change was this, is called iTunes. Transformed the music world overnight. You no longer had to go to a record store and buy a record or a CD or a cassette. You no longer had to buy a record player, a cassette player, or a CD player. You could go on, you could download your music 99 cents at a time. And that transformed the world. It put record stores out of business. It put technology companies out of business. And all of this happened slowly while many of us really weren't paying that much attention. But it was disruptive change in the marketplace, and it was disruptive change around the world. And so what did that do? Instantly, in just a very short period of time, you have this one device you can call an iPhone or a smartphone, and it can do all these things. It can be your GPS device now, so you can find your way around anywhere in the world. It can be your television, your movie player. It can be your EKG. It can read your heart rate. It can take your blood pressure. It can take your blood type. It can do all these things, and it still does your email, and it still is a telephone. It still does all these things as well. But this device replaced thousands and thousands and thousands of devices. And all of that happened within a period of the last 7 years. In the last 7 years, that one device transformed everything. That's called disruptive change in the market. And that's why one of the biggest technology companies in the world, called Cisco, coined the term the Internet of Things. And then a year later, they said, nope, it's the Internet of Everything. Because everything in a few short years is going to be connected to the Internet. How are we prepared? As North Carolinians, what does that mean? What are we doing to prepare for this future, this Internet of Everything? And how are we painting an envisioned future of our state to be the innovators for this Internet of Everything? So facing the innovation challenge. This is a great challenge. What does this look like? Why do we need rapid innovation in North Carolina? Why do we need to set the framework for this innovation right here in our state? Well, it used to be, if you look at the upper left-hand corner here of this slide, it used to be that factories used to employ lots of people to make lots of things on an assembly line over a long period of time. And now if you look at the bottom right-hand picture, factories are now machines, making lots of things a lot better, a lot faster with a lot fewer people. So what do we have to do? We have to innovate at such a rapid pace to create the types of jobs that we need to fill the factories, to fill these high-tech jobs. We need to do that at a very rapid pace. And so how are we going to do that in North Carolina? It used to be that we went from mass production on these assembly lines. We went to a world of mass customization where you could go online and you could customize any product that you want and you can have it shipped to you overnight. And Amazon will do that for you. Nike will do that for you. There's so many companies that do that for you now. You've probably all done this. And now we're moving into this world of personal customization and production, into this world of manufacturing 3.0, where you're going to be designing things in your home, on your computer, and you're going to be printing them out with 3D printers, printer technology that's going to create objects. There are 3D printers for clothing that are being invented now so you can design and print your own clothing to exactly fit your measurements of your body. This is the manufacturing world that we're moving to. And this is where rapid innovation happens. Innovation is no longer going to happen in the engineering firm. It's going to happen in your home. And you're going to be changing and inventing and creating. So how are we prepared as North Carolinians to take over this world of innovation and invest in this world of innovation? And the manufacturing is just one tip of the iceberg here in North Carolina. It's a big part of what we do. Agriculture is our largest industry. $80 billion industry in North Carolina. It's being transformed by the same technological innovations that all these other industries are being transformed by. Look at the biotech world, the wearable technology world, nanotechnology, healthcare, big data, driverless cars, personal air travel, smart materials, the cloud. All these things are transforming the world, and we have to be prepared. So, I believe that the catalyst of disruptive change is education. Education is the thing that is going to prepare our children and our adults to take part in this great innovation revolution. And it's going to take place right here in North Carolina. Why do I say that? Well, there's a lot of things going on with education right now that I'll tell you about in a moment, but let me run you through a few slides. Did you know that we're currently preparing students for jobs that do not exist, using technology that has not been invented to solve problems that we don't even know are problems yet? That's the great challenge of education. What our teachers are preparing our students for are jobs that don't even exist. We have to be very nimble. We have to be very creative. Education doesn't look like it looked 100 years ago. Did you know that the top 10 in-demand jobs in 2010 did not even exist in 2004? Isn't that amazing? Within a 6-year period of time, you're going through this education track for a job that you think is going to exist. That job may not even exist. What's that going to do to the world of education? Well, not much has changed over the last 100 years, from the one-room schoolhouse to the larger, nicer one-room schoolhouse to the multi-room schoolhouse to the technologically advanced multi-room schoolhouse. Not much has changed until this device came along, and a lot of other things started happening with broadband internet that allowed us to connect all these schools through technology. And so the tablet comes along and changes the platform, changes the dynamics of how we deliver education in America. And I believe that this is going to transform education all over the world. Because in India right now, they've developed the $35 tablet. And they're distributing those $35 tablets to hundreds of millions of students around the world, or around India. And we're going to do the same here in North Carolina. And this is going to be the thing that bridges the gap, bridges the great divide of education. We've talked for decades about the socioeconomic gap that exists in education. And I believe that North Carolina will be the very first state in America, North Carolina will be the very first state in America to have all of our classrooms connected to broadband internet and have devices in the hands of every one of our students. And that will change the face of education, not just here in North Carolina, but around the world. And that's one of the tools that's going to allow our students to be prepared for this innovation that we're going to have here in our state. So it comes to MOOCs, it comes to digitally connecting our classrooms, and then the cloud. Everything being available on the internet. So that I believe that we're at a transformational time in our country, that for the first time in the history of the world, we have the opportunity to customize education and to customize curriculum to every single student in America. We have the ability to do that now through technology. And so the world of technology and the world of education are being transformed right in front of our faces. And I also believe it's time to transform education through mastery learning. A couple things need to happen here. One is, I believe in North Carolina, we need to free up our teachers. We need to free them up, get these mandates off their backs, get the regulatory environment off their back, get the paperwork off their back, and allow them to do what they do best, what they were trained to do. It's not going to be standards. Many of you have heard me fighting the Common Core battle for the past year. But it's not going to be standards to transform education. That's what a lot of the educational elitists would have you believe, that standards are the thing. That's not going to transform education. The transformation of education is going to happen in the classroom by allowing great teachers to teach our kids in a way that makes learning fun. It gives them a love of learning so that they move through the system loving to learn and loving to research and loving to innovate. And I also believe we're going to transform education through mastery learning. You know, we've developed this whole world of education over the last 100 years that says, if you're in the first grade, you're in the first grade. And then you move to the second grade, and then you move to the third grade, and you learn with your class as you go. Mastery learning says, hey, if you're in the sixth grade and you can be taking calculus in the sixth grade because you're that smart, then let this child take calculus in the sixth grade. Let them go to college in the eighth grade. That's the kind of transformational thinking that we're gonna make sure happens here in North Carolina, so that our students are the innovators around the world, so that all over the world innovative companies come to North Carolina to hire our students. And there's a lot of transformational things that are going to happen. One of the things that I believe is going to happen as we look into the future is the university system is going to have to reinvent itself too. Because what I would do, if I was a company, if I were IBM, I would go into our classrooms, I would go to our schools, and I'd say, give me your top 5 best students. And I'd go recruit from our high schools the best students I could. I'd create IBM University, and I'd bring those students in. I'd pay them for an apprenticeship program. I'd send them through school and train them in everything that I needed to train them in, and they would graduate from that school with all the skills they needed to be in a high-tech company, and they'd be a valuable commodity on the marketplace, and they would graduate with no debt. And now what we're doing is we're sending our kids to a 4-year degree in the university system, allowing them to collect $80,000 to $100,000 in debt to go to that university and coming out and having no job. That's unsustainable. This is going to have to change in America. The university system is going to have to reinvent itself so that it can compete in this global marketplace, so that we can drive down the cost of education, so that we can truly educate our kids for the jobs that we don't even know are going to exist in 4 or 5 years. So how do we get there? One of the things I believe we need to do in North Carolina, and I will continue to push for, is adding innovation into the curriculum of our K-12 schools so that we start our students at a very early age, allowing them to understand what it means, what design thinking means in curriculum, what it means to truly innovate. You can teach these things. We don't currently teach these things, but you can teach these things. What that does is it takes right brain and left brain thinkers and it melds them together in the educational system. Right now, we push science, technology, engineering, and math, and that's great. We're one of the best STEM states in the country right here in North Carolina, and we should be. We should push that. But there's a lot of creative students out there that are right-brain thinkers. They're not left-brain thinkers. They're never going to advance into a STEM degree, and what do we say to them now? Well, go over there on the sidelines. We're going to marginalize you. And we don't need to do that any longer. We need to take these creative minds, we need to blend them together with these left-brain minds that are great mathematicians and scientists and create innovation at a rapid pace. And so not only do we need to push innovation in K-12, but we also need to push innovation in our universities and place innovation degrees out there. So if you're an electrical engineer, you could graduate with a degree in electrical engineering innovation or mechanical engineering innovation. This is going to transform the landscape of education in our state. And again, people will come and seek our students from North Carolina, and we will be the great innovative state of this country. So design thinking, what is it? Tom Kelly says this: prototyping, brainstorming, and observations. These are the fundamentals of reading, writing, and arithmetic of innovation. We need to get back to teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic, the basics. But we also need to teach the fundamentals of design thinking as well. It's because we don't know what's going to be next. We have no idea what's going to be next. We don't know what the next invention in personal transportation is going to be. You know what? People are already working on flying cars. These are already being developed right now. The driverless car, there are 4 states in America who have already passed legislation for the driverless car to allow driverless automobiles on their roads. Where does North Carolina stand? Are we going to pass that legislation? Where is the next driverless car manufacturer going to go? Where's that assembly plant going to locate? In the state that doesn't even have that law on the books? You know, we were first in flight in North Carolina. It's right there on our license plate. What if we were next in flight? What if we were the state that produced the flying car? It may sound crazy. It may sound crazy, but people are already working on this stuff. So what's the next device going to be? What's the next thing going to be? What's the next disruptive change agent going to be in this country? And how prepared are we going to be in North Carolina? These are the things that I believe we need to be talking about as Republicans. This is the envisioned future now. We won the race here. We won the House. We won the Senate. We won the executive branch. Now it's time to lead. Now it's time to paint an envisioned future. Now it's time to give the people of North Carolina something to look forward to. A future that is bright and that is bold, that is courageous. And that's how we're going to transform this country. What if North Carolina becomes the most innovative state in the nation? The place where our students are sought after, the place where venture capitalists invest their capital. That's how we're going to create jobs. And that's how we're going to transform our country. And this is just one aspect of this. So what your senators are doing and what your representatives are doing in this state is already transformational because they're building the infrastructure and putting it in place right now. And it's because of Republican ideas that that's happening. So thank you for your support. Thank you for what you're doing. God bless you all. Keep up the great work. Keep sending these great folks back to Raleigh to keep working for you. Thank you so much.